Is human evolution a scientific fact or a mere conjecture? How solid is the evidence that supposedly supports our evolutionary journey from ape-like ancestors to Homo sapiens? Let's delve into this intriguing topic and scrutinize each piece of evidence that's been put forth by Darwinists. Firstly, the fossil record, often hailed as substantial evidence for human evolution. Yet, upon closer examination, it appears to be severely discordant with the concept of common descent in general and with human evolution in particular. From the Cambrian explosion onward, the entire fossil record simply refuses to conform to Darwinian expectations of common descent. Charles Darwin himself acknowledged that the Cambrian explosion was a problem for his theory and stated that the Cambrian explosion by itself may be truly urged as a valid argument against the views here entertained. In fact, the Cambrian explosion is now even more of a problem for Darwin's theory than it was in Darwin's day. As Stephen Meyer, who wrote a book on the Cambrian explosion titled Darwin's Doubt, noted, the Cambrian explosion has become more explosive. And what makes the Cambrian explosion so explosive, so un-Darwinian and so upside down to what Darwin predicted is the fact that it is phyla, which are among the very highest taxonomic categories, that are found to be explosively appearing in the Cambrian explosion first without any plausible precursors. As James Valentine explained, the record of the first appearance of living phyla, classes, and orders can best be described in Wright's term as from the top down. As well, in the article titled Jerry Coyne's chapter on the fossil record fails to show why evolution is true, paleontologist Douglas Irwin is quoted as saying, the fossil record suggests that the major pulse of diversification of phyla occurs before that of classes, classes before that of orders, orders before that of families. The higher taxa do not seem to have diverged through an accumulation of lower taxa. The article further notes that, indeed, the existence of numerous small and soft-bodied animals in the Precambrian strata undermines one of the most popular responses that these missing transitions can be accounted for by them being too small and too soft-bodied to be preserved. Moreover, it is not only the Cambrian explosion where the fossil record is, basically, completely upside down from what Darwin's theory predicts. In a 2013 article titled, Scientific Study Turns Understanding About Evolution on Its Head, a study looked at nearly 100 fossil groups that appeared subsequent to Cambrian explosion and found that this pattern, known as early high disparity, turns the traditional V-shaped cone model of evolution on its head. That the fossil record is severely discordant, even upside down, to what Darwin's theory predicts is not just some fringe belief that is held by the dreaded creationists, but is something that is readily and widely acknowledged by leading paleontologists. In a 2021 video titled Gunter Beckley Explains What the Fossil Evidence Really Says, Dr. Gunter Beckley, who is a paleontologist himself, quotes many leading Darwinian paleontologists who also agree that the fossil record is severely discordant with Darwin's theory. Thus, given the fact that the entire fossil record, when viewed in its entirety instead of just piecemeal, simply does not conform to Darwinian expectations and is even upside down to Darwinian expectations, then, obviously, we have more than sufficient reason to be very suspicious of the claims from Darwinists that the fossil record for human evolution is, supposedly, a slam dunk. For instance, in an article titled No Known Hominin is Common Ancestor of Neanderthals and Modern Humans, study suggests, it was found that no known hominin species matches the expected dental morphology of the last common ancestor of Neanderthals and modern humans. As well, in their book titled Contested Bones, John Sanford and Chris Roop, who spent 4 years carefully examining the scientific literature, found that it is very clear that the general public has been deceived regarding the credibility and significance of the reputed hominin fossils. Likewise, Casey Luskin also did a deep dive into the peer-reviewed literature and found that multiple authorities recognize that our genus Homo appears in the fossil record abruptly with a complex suite of characteristics never before seen in any hominin. Many of the so-called transitional fossils for human evolution are subject to wide interpretation, often based more on speculation than concrete evidence. As Stephen Jay Gould stated, Most hominid fossils, even though they serve as a basis for endless speculation and elaborate storytelling, are fragments of jaws and scraps of skulls. In May of 2020, in an article titled "Scientists Conclude Human Origins Research is a Big Mess," via a study from the American Museum of Natural History, which is certainly no creationist organization, it was stated, "Humans are storytellers. Theories of human evolution often resemble anthropogenic narratives that borrow the structure of a hero's journey. But unless grounded in testable hypotheses, they are no more than just-so stories." When you look at the narrative for hominin origins, it's just a big mess. There's no consensus whatsoever. Moving on from the fossil evidence, there's the much-touted genetic evidence. Yet, like the entire fossil evidence, the big-picture genetic evidence simply does not line up with what Darwinists predicted. In an article titled "New Paper by Winston Ewart Demonstrates Superiority of Design Model," it is found that Dr. Ewart amassed a total of 9 massive genetic databases. In every single one, without exception, the dependency graph intelligent design model surpassed common descent. The intelligent design model falsified the Darwinist common descent model by 10,064, 40,967, and 515,450 bits respectively. And this is where 6.6 bits is considered to provide decisive evidence for a model. Moreover, when we zoom in on the small picture genetic evidence between humans and chimps, we find much reason to be skeptical of Darwinian claims. In an article titled "The Rise and Fall of DNA Hybridization," it was stated by a Darwinist that the original 98.5% chimp-human DNA similarity comparisons needs to be treated like nuclear waste, bury it safely, and forget about it for a million years. In fact, according to Dr. Jeffrey Tompkins and Dr. Richard Buggs from the best genetic evidence we now have, the genetic similarity figure between humans and chimps is turning out to be around 85% or less, which is far less than the highly misleading 98.5% figure that has been used by Darwinists for years to make it seem as if the genetic evidence for human evolution was a slam dunk. Moreover, where differences are greatest between chimps and humans, and between all other creatures, are not in the genetic sequences, but are instead found in alternative splicing patterns. As the article titled "Evolution by Splicing: Comparing Gene Transcripts from Different Species Reveals Surprising Splicing Diversity" stated, "How do physical and behavioral differences arise if we have a very similar set of genes to that of the mouse, chicken, or frog?" The papers show that most alternative splicing events differ widely between even closely related species. The alternative splicing patterns are very different even between humans and chimpanzees. In fact, in the article titled "Widespread Expansion of Protein Interaction Capabilities by Alternative Splicing," it is stated that as many as 100,000 distinct isoform transcripts could be produced from the 20,000 human protein coding genes, collectively leading to perhaps over 1 million distinct polypeptides obtained by post-translational modification of products of all possible transcript isoforms. This finding of perhaps 1 million distinct polypeptides obtained by post-translational modification is simply completely devastating to the bottom-up, reductive, materialistic explanations of Darwinists. As Stephen Meyer stated in an interview, it has become increasingly clear that the non-coding regions, the crucial operating systems in effect, of the chimp and human genomes are species-specific. That is, they are strikingly different in the two species. I see nothing from a genetic point of view that challenges the idea that humans originated independently from primates. Moreover, there's no concrete evidence that biological form can be reduced to mere mutations in DNA. As Dr. Jonathan Wells noted, studies using saturation mutagenesis in the embryos of fruit flies, roundworms, zebrafish, and mice also provide evidence against the idea that DNA specifies the basic form of an organism. Biologists can mutate, and indeed have mutated, a fruit fly embryo in every possible way, and they have invariably observed only 3 possible outcomes: a normal fruit fly, a defective fruit fly, or a dead fruit fly. Darwinists simply have no evidence that morphology and/or biological form is reducible to mutations to DNA. As the 2020 article titled "On the Problem of Biological Form" stated, at present, the problem of biological form remains unsolved. Moving on to the mathematics of population genetics, a field that supposedly confirms Darwinian claims for human evolution. But does it really? Mathematicians have pointed out numerous inconsistencies and improbabilities in the Darwinian model, casting doubt on its validity. For instance, we now know, via what is termed the waiting time problem in population genetics, that natural selection is grossly inadequate to account for the genetic difference between humans and chimps, as stated in the article titled "The Waiting Time Problem in a Model Hominin Population," waiting a minimum of 1.5 million years, realistically much longer. For a single point, mutation is not timely adaptation in the face of any type of pressing evolutionary challenge. This is especially problematic when we consider that it is estimated that it only took 6 million years for the chimp and human genomes to diverge. While fixing one point mutation is problematic, our simulations show that the fixation of two codependent mutations is extremely problematic, requiring at least 84 million years. This is tenfold longer than the estimated time required for ape-to-man evolution. Certainly, the creation and fixation of a string of three, requiring at least 380 million years, would be extremely untimely and trivial in effect, in terms of the evolution of modern man. Human exceptionalism is another thorn in the side of Darwinian theory. Our unique abilities, particularly our capacity for language, defy the gradual progression suggested by Darwinian evolution. No other species on Earth possesses such sophisticated communication skills, and Darwinists struggle to explain this anomaly. In 2014, an impressive who's who list of leading Darwinian scientists who specialize in this area of language research issued a paper in which they honestly admitted that they have essentially no explanation of how and why our linguistic computations and representations evolved. Moreover, it is this unique human ability to understand, communicate, create, and more specifically to infuse immaterial information into material substrates that has allowed humans, directly contrary to the red in tooth and claw thinking of Darwinists, to become masters of the planet. As the late Tom Wolfe explained in his book Kingdom of Speech, speech is 95% plus of what lifts man above animal. Physically, man is a sad case. His teeth, including his incisors, which he calls eye teeth, are baby size and can barely penetrate the skin of a 2-green apple. His claws can't do anything but scratch him where he itches. His stringy ligament body makes him a weakling compared to all the animals his size. Animals his size? In hand-to-paw, hand-to-claw, or hand-to-incisor combat, any animal his size would have him for lunch. Yet man owns or controls them all. Every animal that exists thanks to his superpower, speech. What is more interesting still about the fact that humans have a unique ability to understand and create information and have come to master the planet through the top-down infusion of immaterial information into material substrates is the fact that due to advances in science, both the universe and life itself are now found to be information theoretic in their foundational basis. As Vlatko Vedral, professor of physics at the University of Oxford, stated, the most fundamental definition of reality is not matter or energy, but information. And it is the processing of information that lies at the root of all physical, biological, economic, and social phenomena. It is hard to imagine a more convincing scientific proof that we are made in the image of God than finding that both the universe and life itself are information theoretic in their foundational basis, and that we, of all the creatures on Earth, uniquely possess an ability to understand and create information and have come to master the planet, not via brute force as is presupposed in Darwinian thought, but precisely because of our ability to infuse immaterial information into material substrates. Perhaps the most puzzling aspect of human existence, however, is our consciousness, our sense of I. Darwinists have no explanation for the emergence of this unique individual subjective experience. Many Darwinists even argue that our sense of self is nothing more than a neuronal illusion. As Steven Pinker, professor in the Department of Psychology at Harvard University, stated, another startling conclusion from the science of consciousness is that the intuitive feeling we have that there's an executive I that sits in a control room of our brain, scanning the screens of the senses and pushing the buttons of the muscles, is an illusion. Claiming that our consciousness experience of being an I is merely a neuronal illusion is, to put it mildly, complete nonsense. As René Descartes pointed out over a century ago in his Argument from Doubt, we can doubt the existence of all things save for the fact that we exist in order to do the doubting in the first place. To summarize, each piece of supposed evidence for human evolution, when scrutinized, evaporates. The fossil record is discordant with the concept of common descent. The genetic evidence is also severely incongruent with claims of common descent. The mathematics of population genetics contradicts Darwinian claims for human evolution. Human exceptionalism, particularly language, defies Darwinian explanations. And the origin of consciousness, particularly the subjective experience of being an I, remains a complete mystery to the materialistic explanations of Darwinian evolution. In conclusion, the supposed evidence for human evolution evaporates when scrutinized in detail. The supposed evidence for human evolution is filled with numerous unbridgeable gaps and inconsistencies. In short, despite Darwinian claims to the contrary, the entire narrative of human evolution that is put forth by Darwinists belongs far more in the realm of just-so stories than it does in the realm of empirical science.